Welcome to the Engineer to Lead podcast, where we feature leaders in engineering. On today's episode, our guest is David Cocke. He's the founder of Structural Focus. Welcome, David. Pleasure to have you with us.
Thanks, Sam. I'm really happy to be here.
Good stuff. So let's start off a little bit about your background. Tell us a bit about your education and that journey from being a structural engineer into actually running your own business.
I actually grew up on the East Coast and got my bachelor's degree back there at Virginia Tech. And then I followed my girlfriend, soon to be wife, to California and got a job at a pretty prominent firm in San Francisco. While working, I realized I needed to have a master's degree. So I went back and got my master's degree while working full time, and I don't recommend that. And so I was at that firm, started in 81. Some key events. We had the Loma Prieta earthquake in 1989, literally kind of threw me into the fire. And then we had an earthquake in Southern California in Northridge in 1994, which provided me the opportunity to pick up my family, move to Los Angeles, and open up a branch office for that firm. After 5 or 6 years, I guess 6 years, I decided I wanted to go out on my own, mainly because I had an idea of the kind of projects that I wanted to do, and it would give me more opportunities to do those projects. So I started Structural Focus in 2001, and now we're coming up on our 25-year anniversary. We have about 25 people in the firm, and we've got a nice list of what we think are really cool projects in our portfolio.
Nice. Yeah. So go into a little bit about what you do at Structural Focus.
You mean my responsibilities or what kind
the
of
projects? Yeah, the projects you're involved in, the types of work. Yeah.
Yeah, I've always been interested in historical buildings. So that's one of our major niches is historic buildings. We've worked on some real landmarks, like the Hotel Del Coronado in down in the San Diego area, Wilshire Boulevard Temple, which is the largest dome in Los Angeles, built in the 1920s on the National Register. The Wallace Annenberg Center for Performing Arts in Beverly Hills, and others. Right now, I'm working on the Huntington Library in San Marino, which is a fascinating project. It houses a priceless collection of documents. So we're doing a seismic strengthening and an expansion, and it's really a fun project for me. The other kind of main area of work that we do is with the entertainment and tech industry, which was kind of my first start in Southern California after the Northridge earthquake. Warner Brothers Studios asked me to come in and help them evaluate the damage and help them with their insurance settlement, which led to a lot of seismic strengthening and evaluations and retrofits, and then spread to all the major and independent film studios in Southern California, as well as with the blending of technology and entertainment like Netflix and Google and Apple and all those guys. We do a lot of work for the tech industry now also. So those are the two major areas that we really like and enjoy. They're kind of fun, very different from run-of-the-mill structural engineering that is done elsewhere.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a very diverse range of work you got there. So tell us a little bit about this seismic evaluation and retrofit work you do, and also a bit about SafeQ Institute that I think you co-founded.
Yes. Well, the seismic retrofit work, we're also a big promoter of sustainability. So I've always liked, and it's related to historic buildings too, an existing building that's already there. If we can improve the structure on that building, make it be able to survive earthquakes, and reuse that building, that's a very sustainable direction to go. So, I don't like to tear down buildings. If people give me a call and say, come over and look at this building, we want to tear it down and we need you to tell us how bad it is. I say, I'm really, generally, I'm not interested. So that is and that's a huge, field in California now because people are not building new buildings as much. The market is not there for office space for new office buildings, but there a lot more people are looking to do an adaptive reuse of their existing building. And there's also some mandatory ordinances out there by some of the cities that we have to retrofit. For example, City of Los Angeles is requiring an evaluation and retrofit of all concrete buildings built before 1980. So we're doing a lot of that work. It's very complicated. Um, and then the Safety Q Institute, what that is supporting is what we've helped establish some programs in Southern California modeled after one in Northern California, originally called Building Occupancy Resumption Program. We've changed the name now to Accelerated Building Reoccupancy Program. It just sounds, ABR sounds better than BORP. Um, and so what that does is that creates a three-way agreement between a building owner, a licensed professional, hopefully, usually structural engineering, and the city, the local agency. And after doing a lot of work up front, the city agrees to allow the licensed professional to actually act on their behalf and inspect a building and put a red, yellow, or green posting on the building after a big disaster. So we've been promoting that. It takes burden off the city. It makes the owner know they're getting a very accurate evaluation of their building because the engineer has studied the building in advance. So they can be a lot more efficient and be that much further along. And they also guarantee that they're going to arrive at the building soon after the event, where the city may take quite a while. It could take weeks before they get to inspect a building. So it really is peace of mind. If it's a building that is creating a lot of revenue for the owner or the tenant, then that becomes a very popular program because it's greatly reducing the risk of business interruption. So we've been able to go to the film studios and establish programs for several of the major film studios where they have, dozens of buildings in one site. So we can act very efficiently for them, just send a team in and take care of their entire campus. So there's a lot of pluses. I'm kind of on a soapbox constantly for that kind of program. And Safety Q Institute is just a resource for cities and for building owners to go to if they're interested in the program. We have some educational stuff, and then we can help them set up that program.
Sure. So you'd say that's something there's continued demand for that type of work.
Yeah, we're forever promoting that idea and giving papers and presentations at various conferences. I was asked 2 years ago by the Applied Technology Council. They had a grant from FEMA to actually write guidelines for that kind of program. So I led that effort. I was a project technical director. And we put a team together that was building officials and engineers and planners and other people, and we looked throughout the U.S. and chose programs that were similar that had been established, and we studied those programs and identified best practices and put those in a guidelines document that was published early last year. So it's really nice. It's got the FEMA logo on it. So when we go to talk to a building official, we can drop it on his desk and go, look, this is a real program. You can really do this. And so that's a big plus. So we're getting more interest and activity now that we've got that publication. So we see this as a great area. We can only add clients if we have enough manpower, because after an event, we are signing on the line that this individual is going to go to that site and this individual is going to go to that site. So we can't over commit, at least for in one specific geographical area. Now, if there's a big earthquake in San Francisco that wouldn't affect Southern California and we had a client up there, we could go. And it doesn't affect our commitments in Southern California, but we are capped. So what we've done actually is we have partnerships with other engineering firms in San Diego, Bay Area, and Portland. And so there are our backups. We assume they're going to take an extra day to get here, but we've got them committed also. So it's an interesting concept, and communities are trying to strengthen their resilience. And the way I see it is this is another tool in the toolbox for getting the communities back up and running after a disaster.
Yeah, sure. So what other opportunities do you see in structural engineering?
What options?
Opportunities in the
Oh,
future?
other opportunities?
Yeah.
Um, well, the other thing that's happening in the structural engineering world, or at least in the seismic world, is this discussion about functional recovery. And that's going to open some more opportunities, because I think it's going to educate building owners and facility owners that they have they have an opportunity to reduce their risk again by realizing that if they just pay for a building that meets the minimum code requirements, then they've got to realize that is the goal for the building code is life safety, and that's not going to take care of the business or the use of that building. So there are steps we can take that are going to be working their way into the building code in the next few years, that examine the importance of the building to be occupied and useful, in operation, functioning is the right word, after a major earthquake. And it doesn't cost a lot more money to reach that performance objective, but the owners aren't necessarily aware that we have the technology and the understanding that we can design a building or retrofit a building to a higher level that's going to get them what they need. There's tools out there now where we can forecast how long it would take to repair a building. If it's a matter of days, that means the building can be functioning sooner. Or if it's a matter of months, that means that you can't use that building for a few months. So we've got ways now that we can forecast what that interruption period is, and as well as how much it's going to cost and all of those kinds of things. So we look at that as opportunities, because more sophisticated clients are going to start understanding that and asking for evaluations of existing buildings, retrofitting to different levels of existing buildings, as well as, choosing that performance objective for new buildings. I think that those are definitely opportunities for us. And like I said earlier, some of it is going to be driven by mandatory government action, like ordinances that require retrofitting of certain types of structures. So we're looking at all those things as opportunities.
Yeah, sounds good. So, looking at your business and your extensive experience, all the different projects you've done, what
Hmm.
particularly would you say are particular successes that you have in the business, or things that you do particularly well as a company?
Um, I, I think we do really well at communicating with our clients and trying to, like I say, we want to give our clients as much information as we can so that they can make a really informed decision. And if you just put on your blinders and you just say, let's retrofit this building to the code, then you're really not thinking about it, in my mind, in a deep enough way to make a good business decision. So we're trying constantly to talk to the clients to make sure they have a real understanding of their options and and they make the right business decision. And that comes down to working with architects also, because architects, they want to build this nice structure that has great space and great light and highly functional and all that. And we like to be in early in the game and really sit down at the table. That's my favorite part of any project, is that early in the game, that first concept discussion with the design team about what they really want to do, what they're really trying to accomplish, and how we can help them do that. And without, blowing the budget or whatever the case may be. So I think we're really good at that. And we really want we like doing unique, complex projects as opposed to just building a box or building designing a strip mall or whatever. We want to work on the hard stuff is what we want.
Yeah, sure. So, what about the main challenges in what you do?
Um, well, I mean, people are a challenge, both on the client and the design team side, and keeping them happy and making them understand. And frankly, dealing with staff is a challenge too, because you've got people at different levels of their careers, and everybody's trying to be successful, and they don't always have the same idea of what that means and what they got to do to get there. So those are all challenges. Money is always a challenge. We think of structural engineering as a noble profession, but we also need to make a profit and make sure everybody, provide everybody with a good life for them and their family. So if we run into difficulties on a project and end up blowing our fees, that's never fun. And if we are working with a design team that has a client that is very demanding and disrespectful and unfair, that's never fun. And then also working on a project where the construction costs go over the budget, what the client wants, and that's never fun. We recently were working on a very complex project, and we told the client at the beginning we thought the construction costs would be up in this range, and they were sure that it was going to be almost half of that. And lo and behold, we got it in the project, and we're getting up there in that range. And the client, the owner, brought the entire team into the conference room, design team and contractor and everybody, and basically yelled at everybody for like 15 minutes. And then at the end, after they finished, they go, "Okay, what's next? What's new on the project?" So I had to tell my young engineer, and felt terrible, that they were sitting there getting yelled at. And I had to tell her, I said, he just did his job. He can now tell his boss he yelled at us for 15 minutes, and now we're moving on. So don't get upset by this. He had to do that. And that was a good learning experience. It wasn't fun while it was happening, but it was a good learning experience.
Yeah, sure. I remember when we spoken before, you talked a little bit about staffing challenges and
Yes.
retaining good talent. I wonder if you could just talk a little bit on that.
Yeah, I mean, it's in California, at least, it's seismic is the big thing. And as I said earlier, we to do what we do, you really need to have a master's degree in structural engineering. And so we hire from all the best schools that have good seismic programs as part of their master's degree. And we're talking to the cream of the crop. And unfortunately, structural engineering might not pay as much as a programmer at Google or whatever the case. So we're competing for talent that is not all going into structural engineering. The people we get are great. I mean, they are talented. But they have friends that are equally talented that are they're going into technology and other areas. So we have to find these people, and we do, and hire them, and then we need to keep them happy. And you're running into that same thing. A lot of times we'll have a young engineer and their roommate is working for Google, and they're getting all these perks and all this money, and not that we don't get paid or paid well. It's just they may have unrealistic ideas about how about their compensation, and a lot of times, those careers. My understanding is they'll start at a very high level of compensation, but then it doesn't go up much. Where in structural engineering, you might start at a lower level, but there's a pretty big ceiling as you advance in your career. So we have to make sure our engineers understand that, and are willing to learn and stick it out and advance at a pretty good rate, as opposed to going and chasing that shiny ball and that shiny object. And we lose people every once in a while. We don't lose a lot. And we do a lot of things to try to keep them, but it's a constant challenge because there's always somebody out there looking, either to take our engineers that are well trained and have them come work for them, or the engineers we have who are rooming with somebody from Google just says, I want to get out of structural engineering. This guy's doing a lot better than me. So those are the two kind of scenarios. Got to keep them happy and keep them in the industry, or keep them happy and not let them jump to another industry.
Yeah, but I remember you mentioned before that you're quite a big advocate for professional activities to help
Yes.
developing your staff. Yeah, I wondered if you could just go into that a little bit.
Yeah, I'm a firm believer of giving back, and being involved in professional activities. It started when I was at my old firm, and I remember the first day. Um, it was Degenkolb Engineers, and Henry Degenkolb was a very famous structural engineer. And he came over and slapped an application to the Structural Engineers Association, membership application on my desk, and said, join this organization. And so I did. That was the first day I was working. And I learned so much, and you learn so much from a social perspective, a technical perspective. You meet other people, so you're networking in the community, and there's just so many opportunities for growth. It helps with your speaking skills. It helps with your listening skills. It helps with your engineering skills. And these organizations, you can get involved and become participate in writing the next version of the building code. There's so many different things you can do. Like I mentioned before, the when I led that group for the FEMA document, I mean, the reason that I was asked to do that was because I have been very involved in the community, and it gives. So the more involved, the more people you know, the more opportunities there are, and it really, in my mind, you're giving back to the community, and it's giving you a lot also. It's really helping you to grow and advance.
Sure, yeah, and like you said, you're networking with other people you might meet in the future. So from a business or career standpoint, I guess
Yes.
that's opening doors down the line as well.
Yeah, absolutely. You think about it, it's not really marketing, because you're hanging around. If it's an engineering organization, you're just hanging around with your colleagues and your competitors. But it does stretch out beyond that eventually, and you start, for one thing, you just get a reputation, and so people will start hearing about you. I was lucky enough. I was quoted in the Los Angeles Times on Tuesday about a story, and they just called me. I know the writer, so he calls me frequently. But he needed a structural engineer to talk, and I don't even remember where I met this guy, but I met him years ago, and that was just a connection through the community that gives me those kind of opportunities.
Yeah, sure. So with your business experience and having staff, dealing with people, what would you say are particular leadership traits that you think are important or things that you've picked up on?
Um, yeah, I'll actually put in a plug for a book. It's called Good to Great, and I can't think of the author right now, but he describes a leader in that book, which I truly believe is the characteristics that a true leader needs. They've got to have self-confidence, obviously, but they need to have really good listening skills. They need to have a sense of responsibility and discipline, so they don't, they really, because everybody is watching, and this is what I tell some of my younger people in the office. Everybody's watching a leader, and so if you want to be a leader, you need to be doing the right things, and you need to be setting an example for everybody else. So, for instance, when I get in the office, first thing I do, I put my coffee down and I walk around the office. I spend 5 minutes just saying hi to everybody. And if everybody did that, it'd be a much more pleasant place. But I want them to know I'm there, and I want them to see what I'm doing. So that's lead by example, listening, communicating well. One of my bosses years ago told me anytime you're communicating with your staff, you need to speak with a lot of clarity so they really understand what you want. Don't assume that they understand what you want. You really need to tell them what you want. Um, I'm sorry, but you got to be a little bit on the humble side too. It doesn't. It's not all bravado. That doesn't make you a leader necessarily. So you've got to be a little bit. You got to show a little bit of modesty and not say, I'm in charge all the time. Um, I think though team building, I like to think that our firm is a bunch of colleagues as opposed to they're not competing against each other. I really don't like that internal competition. We need to work as a team. If we work as a team, we're all going to be successful. And but if you're trying to, kick the other guy out of the way, then you're not going to be successful. And so I'm a firm believer in acting like a team and showing respect for each other, and you're going to get a lot more done that way. So those are
Yeah,
a few of the traits that I believe in.
yeah, sure. So let's move on to industry trends. What do you think? What do you see happening in your industry? What do you see the trends, and where do you think it's going?
Well, there's a lot more. I'll save the big elephant for last. There's a lot of interest in sustainability. And so, in the structural engineers, the entire design industry is thinking along those lines of what can we do? Because the building construction contributes a lot to carbon in the world, and so we need to do what we can to reduce the use of carbon in our construction. So that's one area that we're looking at really hard. We would like to design a what they call a mass timber building, which is all heavy, big lumber, but it's difficult in a seismic area, and there we can definitely do it. I know exactly how we can do it, but convincing a contractor that they can build it for a competitive cost in Southern California has been a tough sell. They're building buildings like that in the Northwest, up in Portland and Seattle, and up there, but not nearly down here. They're pretty rare, at least 100% mass timber. So I that is definitely a trend, and that's because of the sustainability issue that's happening. Um, the other thing, like I said, is the functional recovery part. That is a trend that's happening. The reuse of buildings is a trend that is happening because it makes economic sense right now to do it that way. And like I said, that's another plus for sustainability. And then finally, there's AI and figuring out where we're going with that and how that's going to affect the industry. We have embraced structural engineering has embraced technology. I started, we were doing hand drawing. Then we went to CAD. Now we're in Revit, which is a 3D modeling technique that you can produce a 3D model, and then from that you can print out drawings for construction documents, but the model itself is a reference vehicle for everybody to look at, the entire team. And the next step, where are we going with AI? People are beginning to use it for keeping notes and for emails and things like that. And then further on into the technical world, and that's a little interesting and makes us a little nervous because we need to make sure that it's accurate and it's based on accurate information. So we need to control it, and we need to be able to make quality checks on the results, and because it's going to be very tempting to push a button and accept whatever it says and move on, and say, okay, I just designed the perfect building. That's going to be very, very tempting, and it's even going to be to the point where I think if it's not too complex of a building, it wouldn't be a structural engineer necessarily pushing the button. It might be an architect. And so we have to be careful about that to make sure that like I said, we're doing it in control and in a way that's given us the quality that we need. Um, so we'll see. That's a definite trend. It's the big one, that we're all wondering about.
Yeah, everyone's talking about it. But I see opportunities as well as everyone's talking about how AI is going to take people's jobs, but there's also going to be opportunities, new jobs, like there always is with an advancement in technology. So that's going to be
Yeah,
an interesting time. So we'll see what
yeah.
happens with that. Yeah,
Yeah, I mean, it could be it just changes our job. It's just a different job. We're going to evolve into the way we do things differently. But I don't know if it'll ever replace the structural engineer, and I don't know that I don't know how it's going to. If you think about it, if it's like I said, a simpler new structure, go for it. But retrofitting an historic, church where there's no construction drawings, and so it's going to be harder for AI tools to deal with those, at least for a while. It's going to be easier. It's going to be quicker to evolve to dealing with a simpler new building than it is for an existing building.
yeah, sure. Yeah, it's probably going to be that transition, like a AI assisted CAD, and yeah, you'll still have a lot of the same engineers
Right.
involved. Yeah.
Yep.
So with some of these trends, you mentioned sustainability as well. Do you see any opportunities for the business with these trends that you mentioned?
Yeah, I mean, we're looking into all of those things. At what, there's all of those things we're very interested in, and we're in following those trends. I guess that's why they came to the top of mind when you asked me that question. What we are not involved in, our firm, is hospitals. Um, in California, they're highly regulated, so it's a lot more complex design process. And we don't do high rises. That's kind of a specialty also. There's dozen firms or something in the country that really focus on high rises. Um, so we're not even looking in that direction. But in all those trends that I just talked about, we think that's going to be impacting us. So we're paying attention to those and trying to get the proper training and trying to keep up with the latest information um, and with those things. So that's where we're going.
Yeah. Yeah. I wondered if you go into a little bit about where you want to take the business a bit more into the future. Where do you see yourself taking the business, say, in the next 12 months?
Um, I think probably the market is going to be the the entertainment market is slowed down a bit because a lot of some of that industry is leaving Southern California. And so we're doing some work out of state with that, but not as much as what it has been for the last 5 years. Um, so that is an area that may not be high growth for us for a while. I think where it could be high growth for us for a while would be in the adaptive reuse world, where they're taking existing buildings. There's a big interest right now in California to increase housing, and the office market is depressed in California, especially Southern California right now. So people are beginning to look at these big office towers and say, why can't we put some housing in those office towers? And that is a great question. City of Los Angeles is looking at an ordinance that will make it easier to do that conversion, because there's planning and code issues with that. And then there's just practical design issues with trying to turn a 1990s office tower into at least, maybe a third of it or half of it into housing. Your needs for an office building, a multi-tenant office building, are different structurally and mechanically, especially than for a ground up, 5-story multifamily residential project. So that's where the those difficulties are, and there's not been a lot of that conversion, but everybody wants to do it, so it's going to happen. We have the benefit of having a lot of experience evaluating and retrofitting and rehabilitating buildings, so it's a natural for us to do that. So I think that's going to be a major growth area. We've got two or three that we're looking at right now, and hopefully there'll be a lot more of that. And that'll be good for the communities too, because downtown Los Angeles has taken a hit since COVID, and this will help to bring people back to downtown, which is what we want.
Sure. Yeah, lots of opportunities there. So, yeah, well, thanks for your time today, David. It's been really nice to talk to you. Where can
Yes.
people, if people are interested in what you do, your business, where can they find you? What's your website?
Webpage is structuralfocus.com. Pretty easy there. And my email, if you want, is D as in David, COCKE at structuralfocus.com.
Great. Well, great to talk to you today, David.
Thank you, Sam. Really
Take
enjoyed
care.
it.
Yeah.
All right. You too.
Bye.
Bye.